started, as a kid, I started carving as a young kid. We used to go to my grandparents up in North Carolina a lot, and my grandfather was one of these whittlers, and he always had his latest project there, like the wooden chains or the ball in the cages or something like that. So I would come home after visiting and play with these things. Well, he had turned this chess set there wasn't much else to do. It was kind of on his farm out south of Raleigh there. And so basically all we did was either play checkers or chess with this chessboard that he had made. And at some point in time, I decided I wanted to duplicate his chess set. And my grandfather was one of these characters that was long on tales, but very short on instruction. So what he told me that I ought to do is, some of you may be familiar with some of these things. This is an old sickle bar mower blade. So he told me to take his patterns, trace them. He had his little profiles done on his cigarette carton cardboard. It was good old Camel cigarettes, unfiltered. And he told me, here, copy these patterns, go get a bunch of sickle bar mower blades, grind the profile, and that's how I made my chess set. End of instructions. So I took a bunch of these home, and I spent a good week or more grinding these profiles with my Dremel tool and my little jeweler's files and that. And I got the profiles. This is the little bishop right here. So I took my little ground profile, went up to my lathe, went like that. Oh. Luckily, I was using a Dremel lathe that was about this big. You practically stop the spindle with your fingers. So, of course, it stopped it dead. And I thought, well, that doesn't work. Anyway, luckily this Dremel tool came with these little tiny tools, about 6 inches long. So I thought, all right, I'm going to have to do this. So I basically scraped through that chess set, and this was actually my profile that I used to finish them up. So I finished up that chess set. It wasn't until after my grandfather died that I saw the lathe that he was using. He was using a metal lathe. So he had this thing clamped in there, used the crank, cranked it in. So anyway, but that got me kind of hooked. So after that, this was in 1979, that I did this chess set. So at that point in time, there wasn't the clubs, there wasn't the symposiums, there wasn't all this stuff out there. The only thing I could find out there at that point in time was Dale Nish's book, Creative Wood Turning. So I bought the book. I got my new Craftsman lathe, the one that had that single cylinder in there with nothing lined up. You had to line it up every time you did it practically. Got me my new Craftsman lathe, my tools, and proceeded to teach myself to turn. So I had done the carving before and then got into the turning. And so at some point in time, you get kind of tired of doing brown and round, and you wanted to start doing something else. So I started with some simple embellishments, then some kind of started doing some carving in it, and then I graduated up onto the relief carving. So what I'm going to show you tonight is how I do my relief carving. Y'all can pass it around and look at my little bishop profile there. So let's talk about carvers to begin with. What I like to use is called a micromotor. Unfortunately, there is not one carver that's the end-all and be-all in carvers. You kind of have to have an idea of what you want to do. If you want to do pierce work, that's when you want the pneumatic tools, the one that go up to 400,000 RPM and just kind of, you're literally practically burning through the wood. If you want to do big hogging or big grinders or that kind of stuff, that's when the flex shaft is very useful. For me, when I'm doing this, the flex shaft, no matter where if I'm hanging that motor, that has the flex cable down there, that flex cable is constantly pulling on my wrist. So not only am I trying to control the cut, I'm fighting the cable. So this one has this nice little light cable. My first carvings that I did were basically with a Dremel tool, the big old hunky Dremel tool. So of course after you're carving a couple hours like that, your hands are kind of like this. So then I discovered the micromotors, and I called up a friend of mine and I said, listen. She said, I don't hear anything. I said, exactly. So these are much quieter than the Dremel, a lot less vibration. Another thing about these things is they have this little twist lock right here. If you've ever used the Dremel or the flex shaft, it's like when you change your bit, you're constantly having to find the wrench, find the pin to change your collet, to change bits. I change bits often. This is the price of admission. I mean, this is one of the handiest things on these things, is that little twist lock. The one that I recommend my students get is a brand, and it doesn't really matter on some of these. This is the Master Carver Micro Pro Champion. It's a modestly priced unit. It's less than $200. It is a great little workhorse. You can get some of the high-end ones, NSK ones, but it runs around $1,000. Not everybody can afford that. So the NSK has a brushless motor. This one has 2 little brushes in here. It comes with an extra set of brushes. It takes all of 2 screws to change it. The first time I ever had problems with my little micro motor, of course it was at the Richmond Symposium. What's the worst thing that can happen in a demo? Your tool die. Luckily the trade show is very helpful for that. Somebody ran out and got me another carver. But anyway, I thought it might have been the brushes or a thing. It was actually the $9 on-off switch had gone bad, so I replaced that and it worked just fine. So because I started to change the brushes on it and realized there's still some life in those things. And that thing probably had about 3,000 hours on it at that point in time. So they're a good little workhorse. Another thing about these is this one has, that this unit comes with, it's got the 1/8 inch collet that's a screw-in collet. It's got this little sleeve for my 3/32 bit, so I can go between my 1/8 inch and my 3/32 without unscrewing the collet. It also has a collet that'll fit in there that'll go to your 1/16 inch bits, so that you can use, if you have a bunch of those dental burrs, you can still use that in this little motor. This one is not going to go up as high speed as the pneumatic ones. This one maxes out at about, I think it's 45 to, most of these units like 45 to 50,000 RPMs. Generally speaking, my carving range is going to be in the 25,000 to 35,000 range, somewhere in there. If you have an old Fordham, check the RPM, the flex cable ones, check the RPMs on that, the maximum RPMs, because most of the older ones only went up to 18,000 RPMs. And that's just, how when you're turning on the lathe and turning something and you're bumping along, well, when you're going about that speed with those flex shafts, that's kind of how it feels. So once again, if you can get that speed up a little bit, that'll smooth out the cut on that. So let's see. Oh, the other thing on the carvers, I don't really recommend getting a foot control for these things, even if it's just an on-off switch, because you've got to maintain your foot pressure on that thing. And for most of us, I'm carving for long periods of time, so it starts creeping up your knee, up your hip, and up your back. Generally at home when I'm carving in a nice, comfortable office chair, something that I can just, and because I'm sitting for long hours. And I like to have my feet on the floor. I don't like working on a stool or a bench. Let's see, what else about carver? Any questions about carvers? We'll move on to the carving. Okay, if y'all think of them, just holler them out. All right, for the vessels, first thing you got to do is figure out your wall thickness. We're going to be doing the relief carving on this one. And this is a case where thicker is better. So generally speaking, for my carving, what I'm trying to accomplish is I want to have the look of a vessel underneath a coating of leaves. You've probably seen some work where the leaves are actually form a vessel form. Well, that's kind of not what I'm going for. Not interested in doing the pierce work. I just want to look like the leaves just kind of fell on a vessel. One thing you have to do to begin with is don't think you're going to get that old piece in the corner of the shop that you never could figure out what you're going to do, and you're going to carve your way out of a bad form. You're not going to make your masterpiece out of a poor form. So you need to have a nice shaped piece to begin with on your form, because basically people aren't going to see all the detail you've got on there. So they're going to see that nice form. That nice form is going to get them to come over and look at it closer. Then they're going to see all that detail that you spent all that time carving in. So start out by learning to turn nice form, find pleasing shapes. For the wall thickness, generally what I'm going to do is I want about 1/8 of an inch material in my background area, at least that, and then I generally leave about 1/4 of an inch to do my relief carving. So you're going to have a wall thickness of about 3/8 of an inch. or more than that. This one became a demo piece because I was still kind of turning thin, so there's one little spot that I can see the light shining through, so it's now a demo piece. So I do them a bit thicker now, so I don't have to worry about that. Okay, now I don't necessarily draw very well, but I love picking up leaves. I love taking pictures of leaves. You can scan leaves in on your computer. If you only picked up one leaf and you want a variety of sizes, you can increase or decrease the size on your scanner and get a multiple, sizes of leaves. It doesn't always have to be leaves for me. One year my garden had tons of cayenne peppers. So I actually took a picture of these cayenne peppers, and I loved the arrangement that I had there. So I actually carved it on a vessel just in that orientation. So I take my patterns or whatever, and this is my pattern material, and it's on my resource list that will get emailed around or whatever. It's actually Borco. If any of you are familiar with old drafting table cover. I live in a college town, so we have a nice art supply place, and I saw this stuff. They had some scrap pieces in a box, and I thought, perfect pattern material. I've been searching for some. I'd tried cardboard, of course, is going to fray over time and not really do well over a curved surface. But this little patterns, I can cut it with an X-Acto knife. I can bend these. We can play with them and arrange them and say, okay, I want this leaf to turn this way, and then it flattens back out. So once you got patterns out of this stuff, you basically got it for life, kind of thing. Of course, you can come up with lots of other things to make patterns out of. I just happened to come upon this, and I kind of like it. So you could use a butter dish lid or something like that if you wanted a plastic container. But this is nice and pliable, and I can bend it around the surface. Generally speaking, when I'm doing the layout of a piece, kind of have the pattern fit the form. If you were going to do, say, a long skinny leaf or a vine, well, you might think about having a long skinny vessel. That pepper one that I showed you, I had more of a pepper shape to the vessel. So a long skinny leaf, long skinny vessel, short little round leaf, maybe a short squatty vessel, and have it around. When I'm drawing it on the vessel, to give it more visual appeal, I kind of have the pattern smaller, where my vessel is smaller, and kind of graduate on up as my vessel increases in diameter. And that kind of keeps your eye flowing around the piece. You can kind of see right here on the clovers where I've got it small, where the vessel is small, increase in size, and then when we close back in, kind of decrease in size on the pattern. And just kind of keep your eye going around this piece. So I may spend an evening kind of doing the layout on my work here, so that I kind of like the flow, and then I'll come back and look at it the next day, and if I still like it, then I'm going to go with it. So for this demo, what we're going to do is I'm just going to do 2 leaves tonight, because what I want to do is get through all the steps on how I create this relief work. So in my layout, what I tend to do is try and avoid trouble areas. So of course, when you start doing this, you have no clue what's going to be a trouble area. I can tell you that a stem over a leaf is going to cause you a little more problem. If you like that orientation, maybe tuck that stem up under there. It can come out the other side in the background area. It's not going to cause you as much problem, but over the top, you've got to think about too many things for that. I try and avoid tiny little spots that maybe I can't figure out what kind of bit to get in there. So if I open it up, make a bigger one, it's easier to get into, or I can close it all the way together, all together. So I'm going to start out. Let's see, let's see where do I want this. Oh, somewhere in here. So I have that stem coming out that way. You might think about, generally what I like to do is I'm carving a lot on cherry, and this is a little cherry disc that I have. And what I have my students do, we generally start on a little disc, because basically you've got your flat grain, your side grain, and your end grain all in this little disc. So you can kind of power carving. It's going to carve a little bit different on each point on the vessel. And of course, since we like to do turnings and carve on curved surfaces, the disc is an appropriate way to start. The nice thing about what I do is there's a lot of troubleshooting in carving. And you kind of figure out how to get there, what bit to use. Nice thing about a round surface as opposed to flat work is the wood naturally falls away from your hand, so you don't have as much problem with reach on your bits. All right, let's go ahead and get some leaves on here. I'm just going to use a mechanical pencil and just trace. Like I said, I don't draw particularly well, but I can trace really well. I like a mechanical pencil only because I don't have to go to the pencil sharpener. There's no special lead. If you've got some wood that pencil mark doesn't show up, then you might try using a white color pencil or something like that. All right, so basically what I'm going to do is kind of create two overlapping leaves here. My light is glare. Now at home I need lots of light. I generally have light from a couple different directions. It's amazing how you get older, you need more light.
So there's no tape involved in that at all? You don't tape any of your patterns to the...
It just kind of bends over the surface, so I'm just kind of going around it. Did I do up there yet? No, didn't do up there yet. You could tape them on, but really no need to for this. And usually, since I have a couple sizes or whatever, I can kind of place two together, and I continue on around. Let's see, I'm going to draw my stem in. I think I'll do the curve this way on that one. And this one's going to come out over here, and I'm going to kind of curve it out this way. Now you'll see what I did. I went around one, and then I went around the other. So now I got a mess in the middle. So this happens a lot of times. But what you need to do is when you're drawing around this, take this other end of this pencil and take care of any extraneous lines while you can remember what you're doing. Because I'm making my decision which leaves up, which leaves down as I lay it out all across my vessel. But if you happen to go around one, and if you go around all the way around all of them, then you're going to have all these pencil lines, and you're going to forget who's up, who's down. If you have a hard time seeing when you start getting it all laid out, and it just looks like just a wad of pencils, maybe what you need to do, or just a lot of pencil lines, and you can't differentiate, maybe outline one leaf in one color and one in the other. Do whatever you need so that you can kind of see what leaves you've got on there. You can do little marks, this end up, or something like that. Now, when I get it on there, I can kind of visualize the different layers, but not everybody can do that. So we've got it drawn on there. I continue on with my whole piece until I get it all laid out on the whole thing. Okay, one thing about power carving is we are making the finest dust, which is going to be the most breathable dust. So wear some kind of dust protection. At home when I'm carving, I have a carving hood that's also pulling all that fine dust away. You know, you may not be breathing in big old chips like this, but this fine dust is what you will be breathing in. So I'm going to be going incognito on the camera now. So, I'll turn that off. Okay, so the first bit that I'm going to use, generally speaking, I have for my students when we have a hands-on class or something like that, I have probably a set of about $50 worth of bits. That it's just a modestly priced amount of bits, but I can do everything that I do with that little handful of bits. This pack there's 6 bits in here, and it's about $1 a bit on these. I think they're $5.50 for this little 6-pack. They're modestly priced. They're not going to last forever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these little stump cutters out of here. It's kind of a little straight fluted thing. And if any of you carvers out here are familiar with, what I'm going to do initially is do the stop cut on the outside. Once I've got it all laid out, if I want to, I have my nice curve on my piece. I'm going to focus on the background to begin with and remove it all a uniform depth, so all it'll do is just maintain that same curve and just be a little bit smaller in there. So the first thing we do is establish our background area. So I'm just going to kind of consider that all one unit right now. Any left-handers in here? Okay. Y'all have been dealing with this a long time. Most of these carvers have a reverse on them. Unfortunately, most of the flutes are designed to go in the forward rotation. There are bits that'll show you that you can go forward or reverse. This one only goes in the forward rotation. So on this piece, we've got our high spot here. For right-handers, the easiest cut that I have is going to be down the hill and towards you. For the left-handers, it's going to be down the hill and away from you, instead of against the grain. So for this first cut that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be holding it. This is my little sandbag so I can adjust the thing. Oh, and I don't even need a fixture. I forgot to say that. When I turn my pieces, I turn them to completion. Because basically for the power carving, all I need to do is rest my hand on it, and that pretty much stabilizes it. It's not like hammer and chisel that I'm going to be putting a lot of pressure. But for me, my hands work in tandem. This is how I get all the control that I get. So I'm holding it like a pencil. I kind of extend my last two fingers, so that's kind of stopping my hand. If you've ever done any power carving and had that tool kind of run on you, this is what's going to stop that. So I've got my fingers propping there. That's one leg of my stool. My other hand is kind of bracing my piece, and my thumb is either on my thumb or on the tool, and my hand, it's a push-pull action between my hands. So that tool is locked between my hands. That's the second leg of my stool, and the tip of my bit's the third leg of that stool. All right. So the first cut basically what I said before is if I do a 3/8 inch wall thickness, and I'm going to leave about 1/4 of an inch for my depth of my leaves. So, but I'm not going to go that full 1/4 inch to begin with. I'm going to just do it in a couple of steps. The first bite that I'm going to do is only about 1/8 of an inch. And the reason I do that is all that fine dust, if I go that full depth, all that fine dust is going to start packing up into those little flutes, and it's going to start burning. So if you ask your bit to do too much, it's just going to load up. And once it starts burning, then you have to clean out your bit. For power carving, your wood has to be dry. So if you're really gumming up your bits, chances are your wood's not dry enough. So I like to turn green like most of us. It's much easier to turn green, but then you let it dry before you start doing the carving. Now, if you like to do something like the reciprocating carving, of course, just like turning green wood is easier, the reciprocating carving is much easier on green wood. So you'll see I'm constantly moving this piece. I'm going about 1/8 of an inch down. So I want this line to begin with is going to be perpendicular on the outside of the line. But instead of holding my tool perpendicular, I can hold it on edge. I just have to get my cut perpendicular. I kind of leave my stems a little bit big to begin with, just because it's a little bit easier to sneak up on it than it is to put wood back. So I'm just doing that down the hill and towards me pull. It's kind of just a pull cut, and that keeps it real stable there. Now, of course, since we were all wearing our dust mask, it's very hard to blow that dust away. So either have some kind of brush, or I had one student dub it the Dixie flip. Don't do it when you're sharing a table with somebody else carving. They don't appreciate it. Okay, so we've gone around and basically done our stop cut to begin with. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use one of these more aggressive burrs. These are the other one's just basically high-speed steel, vanadium tungsten bit. These are a carbide bit, kind of your wicked-looking carbide ones. This is a bit that can go either forward or reverse. They've just got those little knobs of carbide on them, and they last a really long time until a student uses it on metal or something like that. So I'm going to use this guy right there. So they'll virtually last forever until you misuse them. I'm going to use this little guy right here. Like I said, it goes forward or reverse. It cuts wood or finger, doesn't really care. But they're not that hard to control. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to come in here. Now this one, anytime I'm going to do a hogging, it's more of an overhanded grip. And so this time I'm extending my index finger. So that's kind of my stop, keep that thing running from running out that way. Still have my hands together, have that tool locked in between my hands, and it's kind of a push-pull. Now for this cut, all I'm doing is just getting some of the, it's a coarse cut. So just getting some of that wood out of there. Now for this exercise, or for this demo, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to maintain my uniform depth around my leaves and just kind of taper back to the edge. But on a vessel, I would maintain a uniform depth around the whole thing. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple steps here. In 2004, I was very fortunate enough to take a class with Jack Vessery at Aramont. And the one thing that I saw him do that it never even occurred to me was modifying a carving bit out of the pack. So one of my favorite ones is this little bit right here that I modify. So for this next little step is I'm modifying that same bit out of this set right here. It's a straight little flute. And what I'm going to do is I take it to the grinder, and it's got a rounded shoulder, and so I have to grind it past that rounded shoulder. So I'm basically making, you may have seen it if you're doing any carving, seen a safe end cutter. So essentially I'm making a safe end cutter. I'm basically grinding off the flat end. And what I do is I go to the grinding wheel, just like you'd grind your turning tools. I'm going perpendicular at it, kind of hold it between my fingers, and I'm turning it as I grind it. Because if you go straight in and at an angle, what's going to happen is you're going to have one side higher than the other. So I'm going as flat as I can, kind of perpendicular across there. I am also going to grind it to 3/16 on this. I said I leave about a 1/4 of an inch. Well, not quite. I'm going to do 3/16. So if I've got a 3/8 inch wall thickness, I'm going to allow 3/16 for my leaves, and then it gives me a 1/16 of wiggle room in case I miscalculated somewhere. So I just learned that by experience. So I'm going to take one of these little bits. This is what I'm going to do to establish my depth and clean up my wall. This is where I'm going to stand this thing up here. Oh, good. You can see really well. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this kind of like a plunge router. So I'm going to kind of nibble across. Basically what I'm doing is tilting till I get a little ledge, but I've got a bit of an angle here, so I've got a ledge, and I'm just nibbling down towards the edge. I just nibble down, and then I'm going to do what I call a controlled run out. It's essentially the climb cut if you use a router kind of thing. I'm going in the direction of the rotation of the bit, and I'm kind of pushing with my left thumb and sweeping along that edge. So it's kind of take a little bit, bite, come over to the edge of the leaf, and then sweep along. So my goal here is to get that 90-degree angle between the edge of my leaf and the edge of my background, all at a uniform depth. So I nibble across and dig down. I carry that 90-degree angle out about 1/4 of an inch or so. Then I can get in with a bigger bit and blend that in. So I nibble across, sweep it along, nibble across, sweep it along. Of course, you can take that sharp edge and hack away, but that's really not the goal that I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to use that as my depth gauge and nibble along. So what I'm going to do now for the next probably 15 minutes or so is go ahead and establish this background depth around the whole thing. And I'm going to turn it over to y'all to do whatever. Anybody who wants to come up and get a closer look, you're welcome to. But I'm going to go ahead and do all that to that step, and then I'll holler at y'all then I'm ready.